Dried fruit isn't supposed to grow, but 3 years ago, I took that as a challenge by growing this dried fig into a plant. For a year, I kept this paper towel damp. Every week, I checked for sprouts. What do they call that? Crazy? Commitment. And one day, during month 14 of waiting, I did the weekly check. But I saw something different. I woke up from my slumber to this. Celebration. I couldn't believe it. So I got the little aliens in soil, put it in my indoor grow box, and waited. I didn't have very high hopes until one day, a few months later, I woke up to this. I really couldn't believe it. I kept repotting it over the next full year. I even 3D printed this pot for it, and it grew bigger than I ever expected it to. And as soon as I realized that our fig plant was thriving, I knew I was gonna have to wait a whole nother year for more growth to happen. And so you can probably guess what happened next. I started to get a little bit of an obsession for growing figs, not gonna lie, and I decided I was gonna try this again, but with fresh figs instead of dried figs this time. Because if the dried fruit defied the odds and grew, of course, the fresh ones would likely have an easier time growing, right? Wrong! Because I took that fig, opened it up to reveal the juicy inner flesh, of course devoured some of it, and then placed the fig covered in seeds right in some soil. I made sure to place it in the summer sun, and let me tell you that I waited the entire summer. We're from Canada, only 4 or 5 months of summer, but whatever I did here clearly did not work for some reason, because nothing ever grew, and I was so confused, and I really wanted this to work like the first time around. So, you know what I had to do, determined as heckin', I got another fresh fig. But this time, I knew I had to try something different because you know what happens when you keep trying to do the same thing over and over again, you beat the dead horse and you get the same results. So this time, instead of placing the fresh, juicy fig straight in soil, I was gonna try germinating the seeds on a damp piece of paper towel. So I got to work removing the seeds one by one, which by the way took me like 2 full hours, and then got them on that paper towel, sealed it up in a baggie, and waited 7 months for growth. But of course, every couple of weeks, I would open the paper towel up, spritz it religiously, and by month 6 out of that 7, I started to get really nervous that these things were never gonna grow, especially because when I opened the paper towel, the seeds were pretty moldy. So I tried to clean the seeds as best I could and placed them on a new fresh piece of paper towel, spritzed it with water, and waited some more. I remembered, however, that patience was likely key here since it did take 14 months of waiting for the dried fig seeds to germinate, so I still had a little bit of hope, not much, but you know what? It was a good thing that I didn't throw those things out, because trust me, I was really close to tossing them in the trash, because at month 7, I woke up, opened the paper towel, and revealed 2 tiny baby sprouts. Carefully, I took the little aliens in my hands, examined them to ensure they were still alive, and got them in some soil, and of course, the waiting game yet again begun. And while I waited, I learned something that really surprised me and also kind of grossed me out, but also made me kind of appreciate nature. That most figs have dead female wasps inside of them because they pollinate them. And I know it's gross, but hear me out, because figs are not actually fruits. They are technically just inverted flowers. So what happens is the wasp crawls inside, lays eggs, fertilizes the flower with pollen from other figs, and once the wasp eggs hatch into tiny little larvae, the little baby wasps feed on the interior of the fig before pupating like a butterfly and exiting the fig as an adult wasp. Now, I would like this a lot more if they were the bees that produce the honey that we all know, love, and need, rather than huge wasp nests that infiltrate the dealer and find the supplier in the garden and cause a lot of pain when stung. And trust me, they sting without warning. Whereas bees don't sting and are actually very friendly, they only sting if they are scared and swatted at. Wasps, different story, and I would know by experience, okay? But anywho, without the wasps, the figs wouldn't develop properly, so the fruit would probably end up dying and not becoming the fresh, juicy figs that we all know and love. So I guess there is one good purpose of wasps existing, as somewhat of nature's little helpers. But as TMI as this is, do not worry, because not all figs have wasps wasps inside, and most of the figs you buy at the grocery store are not pollinated by wasps because the ones sold in stores are parthenocarpic. I think I said that right, but that just means that the figs can develop without pollination. So don't fret, you can enjoy your figs from the grocery store without worrying about the wasps. Unless you're picking them from the trees, then beware. But just keep in mind that even when a fig does contain wasp eggs or larvae that haven't emerged as wasps yet, they are so small and microscopic that they are typically digested along with the rest of the fig's flesh when it's eaten, and at times the female fig even produces an enzyme that digests the wasps completely. So even though it is really gross and the wasps usually emerge from the fig before being consumed by us humans, just know that it's just the cycle of Mother Nature and all of the gifts that she gives us. And it doesn't usually have an impact on the fig's taste or nutritional value. If anything, it adds to that nutrition, so when I eat figs, I actually appreciate them that much more. It's like a tiny adventure happening inside of each fig. And trust me, I was so excited to see a fig tree while traveling Europe with my family. I really wanted to pick one and see if it would ripen off the tree, and also see whether or not there lived a wasp inside. It didn't. So know that even though it is extremely possible, not all figs on all trees will have wasps living inside, but it did, however, instead excrete this extremely sticky white substance when I opened it up, which is pretty much just a milky latex. It's basically a sap that contains a combination of proteins, carbohydrates, other compounds that help morph the fig into its juicy self when matured. Kind of reminded me of the substance that jackfruits excrete when you cut them open. It's sticky and it can even cause some irritation to the skin, but don't worry because this white milky latex substance diminishes as the fruit ripens. And as I waited for my 2 successful tiny fig trees to keep growing, I got a little bit impatient, and during this time, I was actually gifted a little cutting of a fiddle leaf fig tree, and I thought this would grow real figs that you could eat. But I soon learned that there are actually 2 different types of varieties of fig plants, and the ones that we usually have in our homes can produce fruit, but they are not usually edible, whereas the ones on the trees outdoors usually do grow the figs that we can eat. So if you have a fig tree in your house and it grows fruit, just be careful when eating it and make sure you have the Ficus carica and not the Ficus lyrata. Hope I said that right, but anywho, it is really cool to know that figs are one of the oldest fruits in the world, being grown for over 5,000 years and used widely in ancient medicine for coughs and sore throats, and of course in cuisine. In ancient Greece, figs were even considered a sacred fruit and were associated with fertility and with love. So it's safe to say that it's natural that I felt very lucky that I got this beautiful cutting of this ficus fig tree, and at that point in time, I let it propagate in water, and once it was ready, I planted it in soil, and it grew really nicely. And at that point, I had learned that apparently if you want your fiddle leaf fig to start branching out, then all you gotta do is pinch the top off, that top leaf, the little top growth point, and it said that new branches will grow. So of course, I tried it. I picked off the part of the top and soon learned from you guys that I didn't pick off enough of it. So I went back and picked off more of it. And this is what it ended up looking like. I think it worked. I'm not too sure, but it is still growing and chilling with my other plants and nonetheless thriving. And if you know me, then you already can assume that I had to try one last time to grow dried fruit again because there are never enough fig plants growing in my house. And since I knew the paper towel germination method worked, you know exactly what I did next. I got them on a piece of damp paper towel, those millions of tiny seeds, and started to grow another fig tree. And as it grew, I was thankful for this experience because although there were moments where we were unsuccessful, we always try to learn from our mistakes. You already know on this channel, it's all trial and error. So the moral of the story is that we defied the odds and took dried and fresh figs and successfully grew them into a baby little tiny cute tree. So you can in fact go grow figs right now.